Today we're going to look at histograms and how to make and interpret histograms of quantitative data, and we're also going to compare distributions of quantitative data when we have more than one distribution. Okay, histogram. The histogram looks like a bar chart, but there are some important differences. So if we have histogram would look something like this. The bars, you've probably seen them before. They do have bars, but the bars are all touching. And the way it's set up is a little differently. Okay. So for example, we start down here with 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That is an example of a histogram, and all we're really doing is doing a count or a frequency of this bar with all the numbers from 0 to 9, or 0 to not quite 10, and then 10 to 19, or 19.99, depending if you're using decimals or not, would fit in the second category, and they're all called bins. And in this case, we have a bin width of 10, bin width of 10. Okay, and the bars all have to be touching because we're doing it over intervals. Okay, so let's look at an example. We'll make a histogram, and the best way to do this is really just learn how to make one. Okay, so if we want to make a histogram, one, we're going to have to decide the bin width. I usually tell kids take the highest minus the lowest and divide it by somewhere between 6 and 8. Okay? Somewhere between 6 and 8, and figure out what you want your bin width to be. You know, usually your bin width will be 2 or 5 or 10 or something pretty common. But if you got your high minus low, find out how far apart the high and the low are. It helps to then figure out you want to have about 6 to 8 bars. It's usually what I say is about 6 to 8 bars. You have more than that, it starts to get a little clunky. And if you have less than that, it's almost not enough. Okay? Sometimes you might have 5 or even 4, but you're not going to have really less than that. I would say for most data, about 6 to 8 is going to be good. So let's look at NBA scoring averages. The table presents average points scored per game for the 38 NBA teams in the 2012 and 2013 regular season. They would like us to make a histogram to represent the situation and then describe the distribution that we get. So first, as I said, we're going to look at the highest and the lowest. The highest I see is the Denver Nuggets. Looks like they scored 106.1. And the lowest, there's several teams here, the Chicago Bulls, the Washington Wizards, the Philadelphia 76ers scored 93.2. Okay, 93.2. So that would be our low. And if you subtract those, it doesn't have to be exact, it would be about 13. It would be about 13. So if I want to have 6 to 8 bars, maybe I make that 14 and divide by 7 and make my bin width 2. I'll go by 2s. That's 14, it includes 13, and then I can easily divide by 7. I'll have 7 separate bars with a bin width of 2. So let's do that. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start at 93 then, because 93 is needed. 93. Fix that. And then 95, 97, 99, 101, 103, 105, and finally 107, because that gets us above where we want it to be. Okay? As we decided on a bin width of 2. So now all we have to do, this is the average points per game. NBA 2012-2013. And over here we're going to have the frequency. How many times does each one of these come up? Okay. So let's start with the 93s. We count the 93s. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that fall between 93 and 95. So 93 to 95 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now in 95 to 97, we could continue the process here. 95 to 97, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5. I see 5 of them. So 95 to 97, I'll make my bar at 5. Okay. And we just continue on, and at the end it should add up to 30 because there are 30 NBA teams. So more than 97, but not quite 99. More than 97, not quite 99. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 5 of those as well. Okay. 99 to 101. Let's see. 99, nothing there. 99 to 101, there's 1. 99 to 101, there's 2. There's 2. 2. 101 to 103. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the 103 does not count because that goes in the next category. So there's 5 of them. Back up to 5 here. 103 to 105. We get the 103. I want to see the 1. There's only one of those. And finally, 105 to 107. There are 3 of those that fit in those categories. And there's our histogram. There's our histogram. Okay. Labeled. Now they want us to describe that distribution. Well, most of our data is over here on the left. We have 14 teams between 93 and 97. So this is definitely skewed to the right. Centered about maybe 99 with a spread from our lowest of 93.2 to our highest of 106.1. We've already determined those. There do not appear to be any outliers. Okay. So that is what they asked us to do for making the histogram and describing the distribution. All right, comparing distributions. Well, we're going to compare socks. Shape, center, and spread. And outliers. Okay. And then we're also, when we're comparing distributions, we are going to discuss any interesting features that the two graphs have. Okay. So let's look at energy costs, top versus bottom freezers. How do the annual energy costs in dollars compare for refrigerators with top freezers and refrigerators with bottom freezers? The data below are from the May 2010 issue of Consumer Reports. All right, so you can see the top freezers down here and the bottom freezers. And they want us to compare the distributions of energy cost for the two types of refrigerators. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare the shape, center, and spread of both. And you can see at the bottom that they have quite different distributions. The bottom is skewed. The bottom freezers are skewed, and they are very spread out. And the top freezers are very compact there at the bottom, not spread out very much at all, and certainly very symmetric. So we're going to say that bottom freezers have a distribution that is skewed right, while top freezers distribution is fairly symmetric. There are no outliers in the top freezer distribution but appear to be two outliers above $140 in the bottom freezer distribution. We can see those two right there appear to be outliers. Okay. The bottom freezer distribution is very spread out. From a low of about maybe 48 to about 150. That's quite a big spread compared to the top freezers, while the top freezer distribution goes from about $48 to about $68. Much more spread out, much less spread out the top freezer distribution is than the bottom freezer distribution is. Okay. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the center. And when we look at the center here, we might guess that this one's centered about 75 or so, 76, somewhere in there, well, maybe even 80. And if you notice that this one's centered right around 56, and all of the entire distribution of top freezers is less than the average, the center distribution for the bottom freezers. Now that's when we talk about something interesting about the distribution. That would be something interesting to report about our distribution. So we say the bottom freezers are centered at about 80, while the top freezers are centered at about $56, right? The entire top freezer distribution lies below, well below, the center of the bottom freezer distribution. So I would say that if I'm going to choose here based on this alone, that I'm going to choose a refrigerator that has a top freezer instead of a bottom freezer.